Hi, it's Jeff Cable, and I just returned from photographing the Summer Olympics in Paris, and B&H asked me to share 5 tips for shooting sports. So let's start with the first tip. The first tip is to be creative. Now, I know that sounds kind of obvious, but at the Olympics, I'm shooting with 2,200 other photographers, and so it's hard to be unique and get something different. So a couple ways to do that in being creative. You could try different positions to shoot from or different angles to shoot from, and therefore you kind of have that different look than what everybody else is getting. And the other thing I'll do is I'll change my shutter speed. Now, most of the time when you're shooting fast action, you want to be at 1,000th of a second or 2,000th of a second to freeze the action. But one of the things that I'll do differently is I'll actually purposely slow that shutter speed down so I can get something more creative. So I get more motion, let's say in the athlete, or if I'm photographing kayaking or something, I get more motion in the water. So play with the shutter speed, your angles, and your positions. Most of the time I was living on one lens, and that's the new Canon RF 100 to 300 f2.8 lens. I love this lens, it's just amazing. It focuses super fast, and I love the focal range. If I needed more than 300 millimeters, I could put a 1.4 or a 2x teleadapter on there, but most of the time I just used it at 100 to 300. And if you look at this shot here, this is taken at 250 millimeters. This is on the kayak cross, and I focused, and I really wanted the shot with the splash of each of them coming down. And I love the way that the water reacted when the boats hit the water. And again, I use this lens for probably 75% of what I photographed this time at the Paris Olympics. So the second tip is to tell the story. So if I'm shooting something like, let's say, water polo, and I have a goaltender who's got a shutout going, I better have a good photo of that goaltender stopping the puck, the ball, whatever it might be. And in the case of something like maybe an athlete who scored 4 or 5 goals, again, I better have a good photo of that athlete scoring, because whoever I'm giving those images to, they want to be able to tell that story. And so think about, as you're photographing, what is the story that's being told, and how do I show that in the images? My third tip is watch your background. Now, at the Olympics, we're really spoiled. We have really great backgrounds, good colors, and fans who are very interactive. If you're shooting, let's say, in a high school gym, you don't have that. So in the case of the Olympics, where I've got great backgrounds, I'll move to a position where I've got the Olympic rings in the shot, because I'm trying to show where this action happened. Now, if I'm shooting in an environment that has bad backgrounds, I'll try to move to a position where I don't have an open door or people in the background that look like they're bored, or a bunch of cars in the background. So as you're shooting, think about what you can do to mitigate the background if it's not good, and how to utilize the background if it is good. This photo here was taken with a Canon R5 Mark II, and the reason that I shot this photo with that camera is I knew what I was going for. I was going for this venue with the beach volleyball at sunset. I really wanted this shot, but I wanted as much resolution as possible. Knowing that the Canon R5 Mark II had the higher resolution, the 40 megapixels, I took that camera, I took a Canon RF 15 to 35 millimeter lens, so wide angle, to get this shot. I love this. This is probably my favorite image from the Paris Olympics. My fourth tip is to show action and reaction. So as a sports photographer, we get really caught up in the action, right? We've got an athlete doing something really amazing, and we're shooting a bunch of images, and we get that one peak of action shot, and we're all excited, or they score a goal, and we look down at our camera and say, do we get the shot? But then we're missing the reaction. And if you look at the images that you see here, the reaction is as powerful, maybe even more powerful than the shot of the action itself. So that reaction, that emotion that we want to show is really, really important. So don't forget the reaction when you're shooting sports. My fifth tip is to change your focus mode. I see a lot of people trying to photograph, let's say, their kids' sports, and they're in a single fixed focus mode that you would use, let's say, for portraits. That doesn't work in sports, because in sports, you have people who are moving, your subject's moving toward you, away from you, sideways, whatever. They're moving, they're not still. So you want to use the follow focus, or in the case of Canon, I use what's called AI servo focus. And you use that to track the athlete. Now, with the newer mirrorless cameras, they have face and eye detection. I love that, and it's amazing. So what I do is I set up my camera in a dual back button focus mode. So I have the AF on button, which is for face and eye detection. So as long as I can lock in on that athlete's face, it is amazing how much easier it makes it because it keeps them in focus. But there are certain times that doesn't work. Let's say the athlete is not facing me, they're facing away from me, or I'm in an environment where that just isn't locking in the way I want. So I set up the second button, which is my asterisk button, right to the right of the AF on button. And I set that one up for a single focus point in a follow focus or AI servo mode. So if I'm photographing and it's not locking in the face, or I don't have a face to lock in on, I just move my thumb over to the asterisk button and I use a center point focus. But you've got to be in a follow focus if your subjects are moving to and away from you. This photo here was taken with the Canon R1, and I can tell you that previously when shooting in gymnastics, especially with the uneven bars, where they're going up, down, backwards, forwards, and it's really, really hard to achieve focus. And if you look at this photo here, I have perfect focus on the Canon R1 right on her eyes. I can tell you how difficult that is to do. The Canon R1 really helped me to lock in, focus on her, and get a shot like this, which I was really, really proud of. All right, I'm gonna give you a bonus tip here. Now I know that we're supposed to give you 5 tips, but I'm gonna give you a 6th one. You gotta shoot a lot. Now, if you look at us, Olympic photographers, we're taking a lot of images. There are days at the Olympics where we're shooting 8,000 to 10,000 or more images per day. I know it's a lot to go through, but if you're gonna get that shot with that peak of action, if I'm waiting to get the shot of Simone Biles, suspended in air right over that balance beam, I'm not gonna get it shooting 1, 2, or 10 or 20 images. I have to burst out a lot of images. So I will set my camera to shoot at 10, 20, 30, even 40 frames per second to capture that peak of action like you see here. So don't think that you're gonna get this by shooting 1 or 2 frames. You have to shoot a lot. This is true whether you're shooting sports or wildlife. Even when I shoot portraits, I'm not shooting in a single shot mode. I do a multiple shot mode to make sure I get someone looking their best. So make sure you shoot a lot to get those key images that you're looking for. I wanna show you this here. This is Simone Biles. Watch the speed at which 40 frames a second, I'm photographing the entire dismount and a reaction at 40 frames a second. It was pretty awesome to be able to just fire off. The Canon R1 held focus the entire time perfectly, and it was really amazing. So I hope these tips help you to shoot better so you can get better sports images for yourself and maybe get yourself to the Olympics.